Entonces, queremos comenzar nada más mencionando que queremos honrar a los idiomas en este espacio, más allá del inglés y el español, especialmente los idiomas de todas las tierras y de las personas de nuestros territorios, las personas originarias de nuestros territorios. Por ejemplo, Lía y yo estamos en tierra Tongva no cedida, lo que ahora es conocido como Los Ángeles.
We'd like to begin by honoring all of the languages that are here today more than English and Spanish, especially languages of the original peoples of the lands in which we are on. Leah and I are on Tongva, unceded Tongva land, which is now called Los Angeles.
Entonces, para facilitar la conversación multilingüe, vamos a estar utilizando la herramienta de interpretación de Zoom, que no ha sido activada, pero una vez que la activen, les vamos a explicar qué es lo que van a ver y cómo acceder a su canal de idioma.
In order to carry out a multilingual space in communication, we will be using the interpreting feature in Zoom, which is not yet activated, but once it is, we will explain now how to use it, and you'll be able to access a channel once it's activated.
Entonces, si están... ¡No!
Oh.
Si están conectados a través de una computadora, van a ver un pequeño icono en forma de globo que va a aparecer en la parte inferior. Ahí le pueden dar clic y seleccionan su canal, ya sea el inglés o el español.
If you are joining on a computer, you will see the icon of a globe or a world at the bottom right of your Zoom screen. From there, you will click and choose a language, Spanish or English.
Si están conectándose a través de una tableta o de un teléfono inteligente, el botón va a tener 3 puntos y va a decir más o more. Después hay otro menú con interpretación de idiomas y luego seleccionan su canal.
If you are joining on a tablet or a smartphone, the button will appear as with 3 dots, and it will say more or más depending on your language. From there, you'll click for another menu that says language interpretation, and from there you can select your language and click done.
Si por alguna razón tienen problemas para poder acceder a la interpretación o no pueden ver el icono, comuníquense vía el chat con Juan o con alguna de las intérpretes y les podremos ayudar.
If for any reason you have any problems accessing the interpreting or you can't see the icon, please communicate in the chat with Juan or one of the interpreters, and we will be happy to help.
Como siempre, es un gran honor poder estar apoyando a Lace en sus esfuerzos para crear espacios multilingües, ya que sentimos mucha solidaridad por el trabajo que están haciendo.
As always, it is a great honor to be supporting Lace in their multilingual efforts, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Gracias.
Thank you.
Okay. Bienvenidos a todos. Ahora pueden ver al final de la pantalla el mundito donde pueden seleccionar la interpretación. Ok. Bienvenidos a todos. Mi nombre es Daniela Lieja Quintanar.
My name is Daniela Quintanar. I'm the Chief Curator of Lace in Los Angeles Contemporary Exhibitions. And I'm very happy to be here with all of you. Thank you for connecting so early. And we'd just like to remind you that Lace is on Tongva territory, and we want to recognize the resistance work of this people that has been going on for many years and is still present and is the future of this land. And I'd like to recognize also that in Los Angeles, there's a big group of people that come from different parts of Latin America and the world, indigenous groups that have been displaced, and we also honor their fight. Today, we are getting together as part of Intergalactix, which has this satellite program. That's how Adan has named it. Adan Bardesido, who is the organizer of it, Triángulo Nother. We have been doing a series of talks that has been very important that are coming from the center, from the heart of the Americas, Central America. And so I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Intergalactix. It's a research project that has been researching collaborative practices, collaborative artistic practices that are concentrate. Hello. So I'm going to continue. So the practices, these are practices that respond to the border and that have been led by the US in a very historically in a very violent way. And I see that one of the things that we concentrate on is the collaboration, a collective life, and the idea that all of us have a condition, a cosmic condition. That term, I took it from Achille Mbembe, who talked about we need to talk about a condition outside of the planet. It's a scene of reconciliation between the human, the animal, the vegetable, the organic, the mineral, and all the other vital forces, whether they come from the stars, the sun, or other planets, and the night. And I'm paraphrasing a quote from Achille Mbembe, because today we're going to talk about the Dry Corridor, which is a work, well, the video is inspired, which is inspired by the Dry Corridor. So now I'm going to introduce our invited guests. Jorge Linares is a visual artist and architect, is a Guatemalan visual artist, and he is joining us from Guatemala. He's a graduate of the National School for Visual Arts, Rafael Rodriguez Padilla. He was a student of the artist Daniel Schaefer during the courses given at the Gallery DS2 from 2002 to 2004. He is an architect for the University of San Carlos de Guatemala. Since 2004, he works with different expressive tools, painting, recording, sculpture, installation, photography, and digital video. He has participated in various individual and collective expositions in galleries, museums, and cultural centers in Guatemala, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, United States, Spain, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Italy, and China. So for those who have not been participating in the other talks, I'll introduce you to Adan Bardesido, who is a visual artist and independent curator, and who has a very strong presence in Central America. He's had a strong work of collaboration, of artistic work, and for us, it's very important to have the voice of Adan to have the connection with Central America. Adan has so many projects. I can mention the most recent one, which is an exhibition as an independent curator. He does public arts works in Panama City, which is from 2021. Thank you so much, and we're going to begin. So if you want to say hi, then we can put the video on. Thank you, Daniela, for the invitation. As always, it's a pleasure to be here to be able to talk about the work of various artists that are supporting us in the Northern Triangle. Thank you to Adan and Daniela for the invitation, and to the whole team of LACE for the technical support and the collaboration for this talk. Thank you, Jorge. That was a wonderful video. I don't know if you'd like to begin by giving us some context around the dry corridor. Yes, of course. I'll talk first about the conceptual work of the dry corridor, and then I can talk a little bit more about the video. The dry corridor goes from Chiapas to the west of Panama. It's 1,600 kilometers, and from country to country, it varies from the region, but I've focused mainly on the dry corridor of Guatemala, for which I have the most familiarity and information. So I will tell you the dry corridor is a consequence of the phenomenon of windward and leeward due to the mountainous topography of Guatemala. The corridor is a reference to the particular geographic area located in Guatemala, and that is composed of the states of El Progreso, Zacapa, Chiquimula, Jalapa, Jutiapa, Santa Rosa, and Baja Verapaz, from the east and the central part of the country, where there are 54,000 poor families who live there, impacted by a severe food crisis that has been getting worse. The loss of harvests in the region has triggered a series of problems: extreme poverty, disease, hunger, lack of employment, chronic child malnutrition, and death, among other problems. This forces the population to migrate to other areas of the country, or to the urban centers as well, or to the United States illegally. Guatemala is one of the countries with the highest rates of malnutrition in Latin America. Social inequality and extreme poverty coincide with a series of environmental factors that are a result of climate change. The products of human alterations, such as deforestation, diverting the rivers, and monocultivation, have accelerated the decrease of rain precipitation and the water volume that bring with it the transformation of the landscape in a country that previously prided itself on its lush nature. So that would be like an introduction to what the dry corridor is, but that produces, it's a problem that is concentrated on climate change, and climate change has given these phenomenons because previously our fathers and grandfathers told us that the seasons in Guatemala are very different. There's the rainy season and the dry season, but now those two cycles have extended. So one day when it rains, and then one day, or for many days it doesn't rain, and next time it rains so much. So in the dry corridor, they lose up to 90% of their harvests in a year, and that really affects the population of the region because the people live from the land. So to lose a harvest 1, 2, 3, 4 years, that it's like if a person has a family, and that person, if you have a family and you don't have a salary for 4 years, it's something very serious, and it definitely mainly affects children because of child malnutrition. So it's very important to have good nutrition from 1 to 5 years. The people in these regions don't have good food. So there are people who are children who are 9 years old who has the height of a child who is 5 years, and children who are 5 years old, and you can see their bone structure and their bloated stomach because they do not have access to clean water. They get water that has been stationary, or water that has been polluted, and that is full of parasites, and it makes the situation worse, even death. I have a in 53 children. In 2018, in 2018, 53 children died, and in 2019, 148 children died in the corridor, in the dry corridor. And with the over the years, you know, children, the people continue to have physical problems, and it's a very serious problem that they are suffering in the dry corridor. Something else I'd like to mention is that this project of Dry Corridor began with an invitation that in 2019 that was with Esperanza, that was this, with the School of Design Art in Costa Rica. And my first design was a sculpture and it was a series of 1,000 photographs, 1,000 satellite photographs of the dry corridor. These photographs I placed one on top of the other, making also like an allusion to the cycles of harvesting. And Adan gave me the space to continue researching, and that's what motivated this work as well. It also makes a reference to the levels. Each year, the people harvest their land, and with each year, it goes one on top of the other. And so the idea of the rain that comes each year, or the idea of the drought that comes each year. And something else that has affected me is that despite the fact that 10 years have passed between one work and another, Guatemala it continues to be the among the first in, or among the highest rates of child malnutrition in Latin America. And we can compare this with countries that are in Africa, and this is really a tragedy because Guatemala produces food, but if their only sustenance is the agriculture and they lose their harvest, and those harvests don't have corn to give to feed their animals, and the cows don't have a place for pasture and they die of hunger, this whole series of events that are affected by the drought over the years.
Jorge, I agree with Daniela. The video is fantastic. I cannot stop thinking about the image of the hurricane as well. It has the same motion of a hurricane, but it is a hurricane of drought. There is a paradox, if you want to call it that. And this is something that you were aware of for this formal solution, or was it more intuitive? Yes, so like I said, like the photograph that was presented at the MAC, it was the idea of layer of a layer of a layer, you know, like the harvesting. But this idea, the circle, I also thought about climate circles or patterns. And the reading that you have, I think it's very interesting, the cycles of hurricanes, that at the same time they, you know, and they finish with communities, and because there's also a lot of deforestation. So I use images from Google Earth because they're like x-rays or visual registers, and a satellite is how how the ochres and the maroons are predominantly there. Maybe a patch, a green patch here and there, but there's always life. That is why also in the audio you can hear some birds and dogs, because even in there is fauna, there are animals that are there, right? Yes, that part I think to be very interesting about the cycles, because there's also a movement in what you were saying, that you started this piece in collaboration with Adan. There's been a dialogue since 10 years ago. So also showing that sequence of time, that it is a clock, and also reminding us that there is a limited time, right? And we should be talking about this, that truthfully, from here, from the United States, we are not talking enough about the connection between immigration and this the environment. I think they're very divided. You don't talk about that. That's also why people are migrating, and it is also one of the main reasons behind immigration. And this is why Adan is inviting you to be part of this dialogue, to just shed light to an issue that has been here for many years. Yes, and also 10 years ago, at the end, and now with the current statistics, Guatemala has the highest index of malnutrition in Latin America, and that really worries me, because it is something that fosters migration in regions like the southern coast, where, when I'm talking about monocrops, they harvest a sugar cane, and they just harvest by hand in this area that's very hot. So Petén and the regions of Izabal, that it is more regarded with African palm. And I was telling Daniela that what these people do is that they burn the woods, because before it was all woods, and now it's been reduced by 30%, the Petén woods, because they need to open up the space for all the cattle, and also to use it for the harvesting of African palm. And because of some fertilizers and chemicals, it ends up in the rivers, and then it eventually kills the rivers, because everything that's thrown out, and that's, well, this is also affecting the life in the river, and also the health of the peoples who are consuming water from the river, right? So they're also migrating to Izabal, to the bananeras, the banana plantations that are the Chiquita Banana, like the Dole company, and that they also have to migrate, because the salaries are lower than and just people get desperate, and then they think that the only solution to the problem is to just migrate to the US, and people die along the way. There are mutilations when they fall from La Bestia, from the train, and the few people that manage to get there and they're not deported, they start to support themselves or support their families through sending them money. And Guatemala, unfortunately, a big part of the economy is being supported by the money that Guatemalans living in the US are sending back. Yes, we watch your video, and you cannot imagine that there's all this political, social, and ecological histories. And as Daniela was mentioning, one of the reasons why I was very interested for you to participate in Triángulo Nother was because of this dialogue, these references to land art and situation, and the use of satellite images in the territory as a reference for creative work as well. And because the majority of the projects we want to, spin that and think, well, those categories of land art and situationism and other perspectives and points of view, like that is what Triángulo Nother is seeking. That yes, there are references in your work to that tradition, let's say, but just using technological act like a current tech that did not exist back then. There is a visual reference to those images, to those aerial images were used in the tradition of land art and situationism. And I don't know if you would like to say something about that, or Daniela maybe, about those references, let's say, of using satellite images, and how is that you are building these animations from those satellite images. Yes, I would just add that precisely I was thinking that there is a use of a landscape and the environment, but like you say, there is a political background in having these landscapes overlapping where truly or really there are no signifiers of life or of human life. It's empty, even if, well, yes, sometimes you see some little squares there, but it would look like it's just empty. There's emptiness, and I was thinking about that in abandoning Earth, and what I was mentioning at the beginning. Really, I think that Jorge's work is connecting the different points, like the political background, the landscape, all these shapes and forms, and also the cosmic condition, that it is a thought that has been more reinforced recently to further understand the issue of migration, but also how our planet is being transformed. And I also thought that it was very interesting to see how you all of a sudden see this cloud, and then you see the shadow of the cloud, but it is a tiny, tiny cloud. Wasn't it a wildfire? What was that, Jorge? Yeah, it could be a cloud. I liked it because it was right in the middle, and it just provided a nice ending to the video. But yes, I think what happens with this phenomenon that I'm talking about with Sotavento is that the wind that brings humidity comes from the north, and that passes through Petenque and part of Izabal, so it reaches the central part of Guatemala where the high lands are. So the wind rises, and then it leaves humidity on one side of the mountain, and when it comes down, this wind, it rises above Corredor Seco, and now it turns into warm wind. It is no longer humid. And this is why this phenomenon in the last 20 years has happened, that we have severe droughts in this area. And this is very directly, like as I was mentioning, an issue deriving from climate change, because it didn't happen before. Guatemala is a country, it relies on its agricultural practices, and a lot of its exports are sugar cane and African palm and banana. And cardamom, it is the largest cardamom exporter in the world. So truly, the economy is based on its agriculture. Yes, actually, today I was. So this is a phenomenon that has been happening since the 70s. And of course, with the large scale industrial practice, the impact on the environment, it's just accelerated. Like you said, the Corredor Seco is a pretty long corridor that runs from Mexico to Panama. And it is said that it is where 90% of the population of those countries are settled. So it's not a small region. It is a vast region, and it is a region that just expels or makes a lot of people, a lot of immigrants leave. And it is also because of the climate change issues. One of the biggest moments of Honduran migration, it is after the hurricane. And what happens, and also the impact on Corredor Seco, is like when it rains, it's just terrible. Rains, the rain season, and then the droughts are just very long. And also, Jorge, when we talk, let's see if you can remind us also the intervention of the US and their policies that, well, you also talked about the bananeras, and then you were also talking about the extractivist industry. Yes, I also have, it is a series that I recorded in Izabal. It is a series that I started in 2016. It was first a video and then a photo series. I also have a little text if you want me to read it. And it's a series called Libre Comercio, a free trade. And it is also related to migration, and as what you were saying, with the influence of the US and Guatemala. So it's free trade. Right now, Guatemala has free trade agreements with the US and other countries, which has affected the small businesses or producers in the country, and they're only benefiting the largest companies. And thanks to these contracts, they have a judicial freedom to operate in the country. And it would seem that history is repeating, but now it is colonization 2.0. So first, they colonized us through arms and the conquista, the conquest. That was the first colonization. But then in the 20th century, we have economic colonization. So colonization 2.0, it is an economic conquest. And the free trade project, I documented that through photography and video in the fifth continent in Izabal. It was through digital processes I transformed the perception of the architecture of the building, and it is through photo and video manipulation. I insert, or I place 3D models, containers, cards, and abstract sculpture elements, intervening in this way the bi-dimensional space of the photographer. And it has a relationship with the past and the present with Guatemala. So here, what I want to say is that these free trade agreements only benefit the largest producers.
And they affect, yes, that's the series. Jorge, could you show us that installation? Yes. Yesterday I was actually looking for it. I don't know why. And I had it on the web page, but I took it down from the web page, but yes. These are the images, but the video was the first thing. So let me see if I can find that. Oh, I have it here. In the chat, I put the video in the chat. So these free trade agreements benefit the international companies, and they harm the small workers in the country, because it's not like in the US where they subsidize their the small farmers. In Guatemala, if you lose your crop, you've lost it. There are many obstacles, and coffee, for example, they export the good coffee and they leave the poor quality coffee for the country. These have also been in the big capitals. For example, the African palm, which is, these practices have weakened the farmers who already were in an unfavored situation. So now it's worse for them. So these containers go directly to the port, Puerto Barrios, which is a port of concession to the US. I don't know if you're familiar with the history of the revolution of 44 and the Democrats who they tried to nationalize the lands, but they labeled the agrarian reform as communist. So the invasion to Guatemala from the United States came actually from Honduras, and they transmitted it on the radio that they were going to invade the country so that the people would get panicked, and you couldn't stop the invasion. And some of the most important figures of the 44 revolution were defeated in the country. And they took those lands and they gave them to the United Fruit Company. Another interesting point that I'd like to comment on while you're watching the video is that from the Atlantic ports and the Pacific ports, there's something that's called the dry channel. And this movement of merchandise from the Atlantic port to the Pacific port is through the highway. In this highway, there is merchandise that is being transported 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And they call it the dry channel because sometimes there are ships that prefer not to go through the Panama Canal, And so they bring them to the ports in order to transport them quickly to the Pacific. And talking also about free trade, the last conversation I had with Daniela, we talked about for the like this is the free trade that is the products are the merchandise can pass freely between borders, but people when they migrate are called illegal. So people, human beings who cannot pass freely, but the merchandise can pass freely. Thank you, Jorge. It seems like there's a couple questions in the chat. Juan, if you could share with us the questions. Yes, the first question is if these exhibitions are on display, right? And the second question was the truck in motion? Was it moving? In the video? Sorry, what was the first question? The first question wanted to confirm if the video is an exhibition on display. That video, I have had it on exhibition in various places since 2006 till now. I've had it on exhibition, but I don't know if that's the, it's been on display, sorry, on exhibition in a few video festivals. And these other ones are the ruins. In the video, you see the ruins of the United Fruit Company. And there's trailers, containers, airplanes. And I think there's something that you can even see is like in the shape of a boat. And these are the means by which the commerce is moved. So those are the virtual images. Yes, you counterpose an image of the historic past of Guatemala in these countries that are poorly called bananeras or banana countries, and that because of the negative influence of the United States in our internal politics. And on the other hand, you have this futurist idea, right, of the containers and the ships and the planes that it benefits this idea that the company gives the idea that the company disappeared, but really it's a very strong presence in the region, but now more sophisticated. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I just wanted to add that, and that's also how that conversation started with Jorge's work. Intergalactix is thinking about from 1994, the Zapatista movement and the neoliberalism, the war against neoliberalism. And when NAFTA and the TLC started, the free trade agreement, the borders are opened for products and merchandise, but they're closed for people. That was a violent phenomenon. I don't know if someone from the public would like to open their mic and ask something directly, or if we have maybe questions in Facebook, Juan. But yes, the continuation of the empire and the colonization and this extractivist economy is very strong. Yes, I was talking to Daniela that the US promotes free trade when it's to their advantage. But for example, when China catches up to them in the technological aspect or they block them, that's not a free trade. Hi, Jorge. I don't have a question, but it's a comment, a reaction about the video that we showed at the beginning of the talk. What really impressed upon me was the colors of the images of the earth. It it reminds me a lot of flesh, human flesh, the colors in the images. That was the first thing that came to my mind. And how skin, when skin is injured, how it looks. So these connections between the earth and the landscape and skin. So yeah, that's something that left a great impression on me, the colors. And that's the image that it reminded me of. Thank you. Yes. It's like the idea of tissue, right? The parcels of land, they become like organic forms. Yes, it's also a violent landscape, right? Yes, yes. And it's like an X-ray of what's happening on the Earth seen from space. And as Adan was saying, people and animals are minimized, so you can't really see so much human activity. You can just sort of see large scales of people distributed in the region. Hello, Jorge. Hello. Listen, my question, I don't know, within the concept, because your work is always very exciting, but today that I saw this last video that I hadn't seen before. And I was thinking about this video in the context of everything that was talked about, and it's very in your face and cruel, right? Even though it can seem beautiful, but it carries with it this whole chunk of reality. And I don't know if with all of this information, if we can visualize, if more people could have the awareness, because I have a lot of apps on my phone, and you can see, like, there's one where you can see like the surface of the earth, and we could do something like, and it's so technological. No, we could see the earth and we can see so many things. We can see night and day, but it doesn't become something more than just a beautiful aesthetic image. But your work has like weight to it, so it's beautiful, no, to see. Perhaps somebody could download an app and see something, and if you could do something to like click there, and you could get information like, oh, here's the Dry Corridor, all of that information, that would be fantastic, right? Yeah, I could give like a sentence or at the end of what was the reality of that region, because aside from the aesthetic aspect is the conceptual aspect. I'd like to give a statistic for Latin America and the Caribbean, where it says that Guatemala now has the most prevalence, with more than 46% of children in poverty. So that's almost 20,000 children who live in poverty, extreme poverty, and who are vulnerable to their food security. And another statistic that's interesting, the Forum of the United Nations on Nutrition says that malnutrition, almost half of Guatemalans are in a state of malnutrition. And in the indigenous countries, it's even greater, because it affects 60% of of children in the indigenous peoples. So these statistics could be like a capsule at the end, know that this is the situation of chronic malnutrition, and it's something very strong because these children are not allowed to develop physically and mentally for the lack of nutrients that they have. Inclusive, they even could die before they're 5 years old. So I think that that hunger is one of the greatest problems of this country, apart from the immigration. But yes, I think, Jose, that your observation is very true.
Yeah, a little bit to for people to understand it better, and I think it would have more weight because it is worth it. Thank you. Also, thank you for the participation, and people were asking if they can rewatch the video, the first video. What I wanted to say is that, well, that's the plan, and then for us to show it in Intergalactic Station here in Los Angeles. But we could also post it online and then promote it so folks can rewatch it.
Okay.
Jessica?
Oh, I have a question. Oh, I don't have a question. I have a comment too, but how can we help out if we want to help and what's happening, going on? Can you put something in the chat for the websites in order to donate or help with the situation that's happening there? Can we help? How can we help? What's happening there?
That's a really good question. How is that we can help, and if there are resources for folks? For Corredor Seco for the region, yes, there are several initiatives. Unfortunately, the government, when they're in campaign, they're saying that, you know, all of the things are going to be their priority, but then once they're in power, they just forget about people. And this has happened with the last candidates that just use it as a flag for their platform that we're going to help people from these spaces, but then it never happens. There are some social initiatives that come directly from communities that have projects. For example, I believe it was either people from the Swedes that they did a drinking a water project. So they did a campaign where they distributed in place or like filters, because you see all the children from Corredor Seco, and they're very strong images, and it's just bones. They're bones and skin, and their bellies are swollen because they're drinking bad water or contaminated water, and they have parasites. And there's also people that have programs, and they bring food for these people to feed the kids and slowly get out of this situation. But in reality, I mean, the help is just minimal. I can do some research to see what organizations are good for you to support people, because I was said there's 54,000 families in this region. So yes, I think we could make a list from Lace and then send it out to the public. I'm going to write it down because it's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Well, that was a really good conversation. And if we don't have any more questions, And then we will say goodbye.
I do have one more thing. Are you going to have another presentation after this one? Is it going to be another thing, or what's happening? This is the first time I ever came, so I don't know. I find it very interesting, very informative. So are you going to have another presentation after this one, or is this the final one for now? Okay. Okay. Oh, okay.
I don't know if you want to share what that conversation is going to be about. It is an analysis about the images of immigration through photojournalism.
Oh, great. This is the Los Angeles Contemporary in Hollywood. That is the museum, or this is what, because I did get a newsletter, and that's how I found out about this one. But that is the one that's in Hollywood, right? On Hollywood and Highland? Wilcox. Okay. Did you used to be on Highland? Hollywood and Highland? Or a long time ago? It was always on Wilcox? Okay. I thought I came to a museum that was Hollywood and Highland. That was Los Angeles Contemporary Museum. I remember that one. And I thought it was Hollywood and Highland. So it's Wilcox. Where is that? Where is it? Where is it? Where? Okay. 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 Okay, thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Have a beautiful morning and rest of the day. Thank you everybody. Thank you, and thank you everybody at the LACE team and everybody who came today. I am very motivated with the Triángulo Nother project, and I'll keep a close eye